What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the debut album by rock band Foo Fighters. Basically, this product is called Self-Titled, and it came out in the summer of 1995. So thinking about this particular project is this came after Dave Grohl of Nirvana developed this project after the suicide of Kurt Cobain in early 1994. He worked on this particular album in the fall of 1994, and it was originally a project that he almost wasn't going to do. He had a lot of catharsis from like that particular happening back in early 1994. One of the bigger note that was a huge thing back in 1994 when that particularly happened. That was like the death of Elvis, pitches like that, some of those type pitches as far as that kind of went along with it. But look after it, just within the example of it, this is an album that helped kick off like post grunge. So it was kind of a revolutionary album here. I do feel like Foo Fighters, this may not be a full blown classic, but it's definitely pretty extensive and has some pretty good quality. It got to the sixth single on here, and it's number ones, just like typical Nirvana albums like the early 90s. It definitely had multiple songs that got some airplay and pitches like that. Definitely pretty good 90s staple. I feel like between this one and their 1997 album, but then Foo Fighters just really hit the ground running for the most part. I mean, this is an album that I want to say at least went double platinum or something like that. This is at least an album that went multi platinum, something like that. It's just kind of the concept that Foo Fighters normally would have like some big staples. They're pretty much like Foo Fighters is definitely one of the more vanilla rock bands, especially the 90s and 2000s. They would generally have one of the staples on rock radio that just is one of the defining type ones to kind of have. Dave Grohl definitely was in that vanilla spotlight for a while, kind of similar to like Smash Mouth for a short time, and like a little bit of Linkin Park, a little bit of like, I mean, Metallica was pretty much like a vanilla. Metallica might have been vanilla for like heavy metal pitches like that. Marilyn Manson was probably vanilla for industrial metal, but I feel like in terms of like pop rock or just standard vanilla rock, this is about one of the faces of rock as far as that particularly kind of went. Most of their albums kind of did that. So, but this initial album was a genre that once again kicked off post grunge here. It was kind of something as the shape shifting type sound. I feel like there's some remnants of like the Nirvana sound here. A lot of grunge type sounds that kind of went along with that. That same sort of pitch that Kurt Cobain would have, especially with like the Nevermind album, and a little bit I would say of In Utero as far as that particular pitch kind of happens with it. Not quite as malaise as In Utero. It's a very kind of relatively healthy album. I would have to say it's not quite as like it's not as forlorn, and if it is, it's more in like a work shift kind of sense of just like maybe work was kind of a bitch today, but I still did it. That sort of concept as far as that particular kind of goes. This has a lot more of just like a this has a lot more of like a robust type altitude, more so than Nirvana's kind of grunge like slacker type mentality. It's not like they were slackers, but just kind of concept is a little bit lazier and within that pitch. But this is a little bit more uppity, a little bit more straightforward, and just kind of has more composure about it. Not necessarily, I want to say within a relative prim sense, but it's not like it looks down on things that are not proper. It's just kind of cause it just has a real healthy. And it's just kind of the facet of what you would expect from like a face of rock music within a relative sense that's going to have like the audience of like Nirvana and folks like that. They're kind of faces like something like Queen or something like other vanilla rock type folk. Can't really think of them. Maybe AC/DC, something like that. Even though they got fucked up. This is kind of the concept. But yeah, there are six singles on this particular project. I feel like this is a seminal album here out of the 90s. It was a pretty big deal as far as that pitch kind of went along with it. Just look after it. Just look after the concept. So this is one of the few grunge-esque albums of Foo Fighters that had to say. I definitely feel like by 1997 they established their sound, but this is kind of like an in-between kind of conduit that has a little bit, once again, of like the Nevermind type sound from 1991 with like a more kind of affable type sound that would be early stages to like what they would do later. Just kind of a big deal. I like the concept of this conduit type feel as far as that pitching goes, but I also like the amalgamation of all the hit singles that were on here. Just the fact that Dave Grohl broke out into like a breakout star of his own just within that relative pitch and became a face of rock. So it's a pretty good concept. But I look after it. Yeah, there's six singles. Wikipedia says there's four, but there were two extra ones. There was also Exhausted and Alone and Easy Target that were kind of released as singles as well. They probably had some airplay in some fashion, but basically out of the six singles, I wound up recommending five. So the only real single I don't recommend is just Exhausted. To talk about that one, basically that one just didn't really like the composition of that particular one. It was kind of like a gnarled type one that's supposed to be really a shredding type one, and like the speakers and pitches like that. But it's the fare behind it is just not quite as interesting. I feel like this is like a real grunge-esque type one that just is really supposed to be like a slog type tune as far as that particular kind of goes. But it's just the amalgamation how that particular kind of happened. It was just a little bit choppy as far as that particular kind of went. So it just was not it's not as affable as one. It's not as affable as one. But this is a call is a pretty nice one. This is a very vanilla rock song, and I'd say it's pretty much a staple of Foo Fighters. I'd say. I mean, I realized that their later albums had larger hits and more widespread type appeal that they would manifest later. Apparently, the biggest song off this particular product, according to Spotify, is Big Me. But a lot of these were a pretty big deal. These were mostly top 5, top 10 singles on like the rock charts. The only one that didn't really chart that well out of like the four singles, not counting Exhausted and Alone and Easy Target was just For All the Cows. But even For All the Cows is a pretty nice one, I'd have to say. So basically almost all the singles are pretty kick ass. But this is a call as like a peppy kind of alternative rock bounce of a song, I'd have to say. It's like a relatively prim outing fun of a song, I'd have to say, and it's like a good kickoff 90s single, I would feel like. So this one just feels like a really healthy and kind of vanilla rock type song to kind of get. Just like if Nirvana were to have like a more makeshift type tone, just pitches like that, just a more amalgamated and commercialized and modernized as far as that pitching goes. It's more to all audiences and pitches like that. I'd have to say it would be a pretty good concept kind of see it. It's not so much that this is like a dumbed down kind of gummy type song, but it's just kind of the concept that it's just pretty widespread. It's just, I think Foo Fighters had the realization that this was going to break out just within the concepts, that it just wasn't as forlorn as Nirvana particularly was. And that's probably how Nirvana would have been had it lasted to the point of getting some songs like this is within that pitch, because it's within the same aesthetic. If you do like Nirvana, this is like an easy kind of cousin to that, just a little bit more vanilla. I'd have to say a little bit more mainstream. It's just kind of concept. It's just not alternative. The fact of the matter was maybe they started off alternative, but it quickly became mainstream, and they were probably just like from there they were just like fuck it, let's just go with it. That's definitely kind of the concept. I'll Stick Around is the second single, or at least the relative. I'll Stick Around is the second main single. It's like a peppy kind of traverse dredge of a song and unwind type tune. I would feel like in particular, it's like a good typical Foo Fighters. I would feel like, and this is just some work shift haze. I would definitely have to say, and it's a pretty early hit, so it's a good concept. So a lot of these, some of these type ones on here, like This Is a Call, I'll Stick Around. Some of those type ones just feel like typical kind of Foo Fighters type songs, just early renditions of the stuff that they would do on their 97, 99. 2002 albums and pitches like that. It's just a concept that they just continue to master this particular song and just get it fleshed out a lot more. I don't remember like their 1997 album. I reviewed that last July, and I remember the pitch behind it, but I don't remember the songs in particular. I need to throw that particular album on my iPod. I think I have it around somewhere. But it's just kind of the pitch of the singles off that particular. I remember at least the single My Hero. That one is pretty much like a vanilla rock type tune. Some of these are kind of pseudo grunge, but they're also pseudo kind of alternative rock that just has like a vanilla taste to it, I'd have to suppose. But this is definitely, I'll Stick Around is definitely one for like some traverse stretch. Just the concept of just that slog type feeling, just that relative unwind type fare of like 4:30, 5:30 p.m. I'd have to say. For All the Cows is a pretty nice one as well. I do like this one. It's like a lazy kind of heartland. For All the Cows is like a lazy kind of heartland pastiming of a song that I'd say in particular is like some simple evening task doing. I would feel like it's a countryside type tune as far as that particular kind of goes, and it's like some basic kind of makeshift activity of a song that I would feel like, and it's just a pretty good hitter. This one's just a little bit lazier, a little bit more outback type feel. This more countryside type fare as far as that particular kind of goes. It's a good concept. Kind of see some of this outback type tune, simple kind of task doing pitches like that. Just a good concept of this evening type fare, just a lazy kind of evening, some more dredge type music, like I'll Stick Around, some of that type fare, but just a more kind of just getting things done and just kind of being simplistic about it, just somewhat lackadaisical, just within the concept. Maybe you have a beer in your hand, something like that. Maybe you just got some KFC, some of those type pitches, just simplistic, just kind of, it's really kind of a roundabout type song, I'd have to say. Just good concept. It's just outback, I would have to suppose, relatively rural, which is an interesting concept for Foo Fighters, I'd have to say. Big Me is the fourth single. This is the most popular song according to Spotify. It's like a dreary kind of lazy makeshift evening of a song, I'd have to say. It's a pretty vanilla song to coast for like the rest of the day. I would definitely feel like this is another kind of dredgy type one, kind of similar to I'll Stick Around. Just a little bit more lazy type one. This is definitely like a Woodstock kind of 60s hazy feel about it that this song particularly gives. This one definitely reminds me like the Beatles and folks like that. Just kind of a Beatles type song circa 1995, 1996 that I'd say, which is a pretty good concept for that. It's the relative appeal behind it. It's definitely a pretty Apple type one. This is another vanilla rock type tune I'd have to say in particular. Pretty popular concept to kind of get here is this once again the relative dreariness of some of these just kind of has the affirmation. I feel like the only real song that really had like some flair towards it in terms of singles would just be This Is a Call. But then I feel like Alone and Easy Target's another one, but that one just didn't. That one was not marketed as like a full-blown single, but it was a single, but it just felt, I don't know if it had a music video made for it. But the next single would be Alone and Easy Target. Now, Wikipedia says that that's not a main single, but it at least was one that had some promotion. So you might be able to hear this on the radio if you look hard enough for pitches like that. But it's like some good evening turn up of a song, I'd have to say, for like venue and social forays. I would definitely feel like This is just like a typical outing unwind, I would have to say, and it's a pretty comfy hit. So I definitely like the appeal of this one. This goes, it's a good pairing with this is a call. I'd have to say a little bit more of a turn up compared to that one. Just some good pitch. I do like the fact that Foo Fighters has some of these night venue type ones that Nirvana kind of had. When you think of songs, when you think of a song by Nirvana like Stay Away or some pitches like that, that just was like some good night venue type boilers, karaoke bar and pub type stuff, I'd have to say this is a pretty good one. Just a nice foot tapper to kind of have in like a night venue pitch just like that. So it does have some good appeal. So it's just kind of the concept. I mean, this is a vanilla rock album, but it does have a pretty good sense of just like social type fare to kind of get on here. It's a good concept that basically is like what Nirvana would have been had it been more vanilla and just more commercialized and modernized and not quite as alternative and forlorn. It's just a good concept. It's a pretty balanced album. Definitely there's a number of hits on here. And out of the 12 song edition off this particular album from 1995, I wound up recommending to you 9. So it's a pretty damn good pitch to kind of say that in particular. The only 3 songs I don't recommend on here would just be Floaty. And the only 3 songs I don't recommend on here would just be Floaty, Watershed, and Exhausted. So talk about those. I already talked about why I didn't recommend Exhausted, just didn't like the instrumentation type fare. Kind of felt like Watershed was just a poor turn up type song. This is another night venue type one that goes well with like Good Grief and This Is a Call and some of those type ones and Alone and Easy Target, but it just doesn't pull up the vibes nearly as well as those particular ones kind of do. It's just kind of a noisier type one that just didn't really have, once again, the kind of correct instrumentation on there that it needed. And then Floaty was just kind of like a Traverse type one, kind of like a more summer stretcher, kind of similar to like Floaty was kind of similar to Big Me, just with a little bit more energy towards it, but I just didn't really like the composition behind it. I feel like they kind of fleshed out some of these summer stretchers a little bit better on later albums, but this one just was not quite as affable one compared to some of these better type ones on here. At least they did it with the singles, I kind of feel like, but there are a lot of like dredgy kind of songs on here, have some of that appeal, but not every single one works as full blown. I'd have to say most of them kind of do, but this is one that just the edge behind it, just the overall sharpness was just not quite as edgy. But basically every other song on this particular album I enjoy. Basically a pretty nice one on here that feels like it could have been a single. It's definitely a pretty popular song off the album according to Spotify. I'd say this is one that I've listened to in the past. I do own this album. I do own this album. I've listened to it for a while, a good 8-10 years, but just like that. But I'd say it's a pretty good concept. Kind of fuck with this one. Good Grief is like a nice one. It's like a late day kind of makeshift commerce of a song I'd have to say in particular. It's like a task to be done and kind of bustle of a song. I would definitely feel like this is definitely one just to miss the day or the evening as far as that pitching goes. Got some stuff to do, get some bills paid, get some stands, some pitches like that, cell phone bills to pay, that sort of stuff, get groceries, just kind of out and about bustle. This song has a compelling sense of pace, I would definitely feel like, and it's pretty melodic. So it's definitely one of the more melodic type ones on here. The melodies just on this particular song, Dave Grohl really knocks this one out of the park in terms of the affability behind it. It's a real catchy type one. Probably one of the more melodic and just sonically pleasing type songs to kind of get on here. Just has a lot of appeal towards it. It's a great album cut, I'd have to say. It's good overall dredgy type of appeal that works. Another good makeshift type one in Commerce. Weenie Beanie is a pretty nice one. This is definitely one of the album's bigger noisemakers, I'd have to say in particular. This one goes well with Alone and Easy Target. I would definitely have to feel like this is just some good night venue craze. So this is probably the one that's probably the most gnarled type one on here. This is another one I forgot to mention when talking about some of those turn up type songs like Good Grief, Alone and Easy Target, and This Is a Call. This one's definitely edgier than This Is a Call and Alone and Easy Target, but it's just relatively tame compared to stuff that metal kind of does, or electronica or EDM or like crunkcore, some of those type pitches. But for 1995, it's still pretty good, nice one. This probably would have been a decent one to have like 1 or 2 or 3 drinks in your system that Nirvana would have done back in 91, 92, something like that, I suppose. Good concept, a little bit edgier one, probably the album's most edgy song I'd have to say, was still relatively vanilla compared to stuff that's on particularly later albums or just metal in general, I'd have to say. Good concept. Ecstatic's a pretty nice one as well. It's like a soft-spoken but gnarled kind of evening excitement of a song, I'd have to say. It's like some prep for like a blitzing kind of night, I would definitely have to say. This is definitely a good song to shake off some of that work shift kind of slog I'd have supposed. So this is one. Well, once again, real soft spoken, just kind of that same Kurt Cobain type vocals that he kind of has on like Lithium, some pitches like that. Dave Grohl does a pretty good pitch with that in particular. It's just kind of the concept that this is one that kind of provides excitement. It's just kind of a primer for something where it's like 5:30, 6:30 p.m. Just the last few moments of just wrapping things up, getting back to the crib, getting ready to get crunk, go pick up some beers, some pitches like that. Just get ready to have a time or head out to a night venue for some ladies, some pitches like that. That's supposed to be a pretty nice one. I do like the concept of this having that good affable social time. I'm glad that this is kind of the concept because the vanilla veneer of this particular project, it's healthy, but it is like social as well. It's just kind of the concept that it has, like, it's not like homebound and just, it's not like there's a problem with being homebound. It's just kind of the concept that there are some albums where you get maybe 1 or 2 kind of songs for that sort of fashion. It's just kind of a concept that just an active kind of, it's just the concept of an active kind of social life, just with an aspect of just the concept of an active kind of outing life with stuff to do. I'd have to say just activities to get done and pitches to go, places to be, and pitches like that. I'd have to suppose it's a pretty good concept, but I do definitely like the instrumentation of X-Stack. It's a pretty gnarled type one, just kind of get here. Probably one of the more fantastic type ones. I mean, most of the sounds pretty excellently produced in terms of like the band work. But this is definitely one that stands out, despite how the fact that the vocals are a little bit tougher to hear on here. And then Oh George is a pretty nice one. This is another dredgy kind of blue collar slogginess I'd have to say in particular. It's like a good late day commerce. I would definitely feel like this is like an early rendition of like typical Foo Fighters, I'd have to say. It definitely reminds me of their 97 albums and pitches like that. Definitely like the singles like I'll Stick Around and This Is a Call. Oh George is like some more stock and quality kind of 5:30 p.m. 6 p.m. type dredge as far as the particular pitch kind of goes along with it. Just some good concepts for that work shift kind of wind down or just get crunkness as far as the particular kind of goes. So that's the concept about it. So me basically recommending 9 songs out of 12 on this particular album. I'm going to go ahead and give this album like an 8.75 out of 10. It's definitely a classic in terms of its impact and what it did for post-grunge and pitches like that, kind of the conduit between the leftover aspects of grunge and just the concept of creating like a new subgenre and pitches like that. For the most part, the impact is classic and just the overall appeal. 6 singles, pitches like that, just some good concepts, plenty of good songwriting, plenty of good instrumentation, stuff like that. It's pretty social album. It's pretty affable, and like its outing senses has a good has a good sense of outing pace as far as that particular kind of happens. So it's pretty dope concept kind of get that in particular. The social score, though, I'm going to go ahead and give the social score probably, I would either give it like a 9.5, 9.75, or like a 10 out of 10. I guess I would say just in terms of the impact it has, suppose, just for what it did 95, 96, and it kicked off a subgenre and pitches like that and had 6 singles. I'm going to go ahead and give this album like a 10 out of 10 in terms of the social score. It's very affable, plenty of good outing songs and just social variety as far as that pitching goes. The makeshift songs are pretty good. They're catchy. They have the good affability if you are with your buds when you're just done with work and pitches like that. Some good night venue type songs like Good Grief, Alone, and Easy Target, This Is a Call. Some good radio staples pitches like that. Some other type ones on here. There's some ones like Weenie Beanie that kind of has some good night venue type craziness overall, shredding type moments. So I definitely have to say it's pretty impactful casually. That's kind of the concept about it. But in terms of future, in terms of the future, I'm not really sure what Foo Fighters has been up to. I know that they at least dropped an album possibly in like 20. I know that they at least dropped an album in 2021 or 2022, some pitches like that. But it's probably been a little bit. They'll probably have another one that's going to be belted out relatively soon as far as that pitch can happen. So it's a pretty good concept. It's definitely an impactful type album here. Once again, classic appeal, classic impact, pitches like that, pretty social classic, some of those type things. Would have to say it's a vanilla rock staple, definitely one of the seminal albums of the 90s. Some stuff like that was a big deal. Good conduit to traverse. It's a good conduit to make the transaction from Nirvana, I'd have to say, and it's just an excellent type concept to kind of get here. There's plenty of good balance type stuff, and this is pretty much, more often than not, this is pretty much an arguable type classic and definitely a big deal just within being a vanilla rock staple and this overall affable type project that has a lot of casual appeal.